over a long enough timeline. Over 100 years, just about every government fails, every bank fails. I challenge you to figure out where you could have actually kept gold or owned a building in the last 150 years where you wouldn't have been wiped out by war or famine or flood or earthquake or collapse or something. So buying Bitcoin doesn't solve this problem, but what it does mean is that every 3 months or every year, you can reevaluate all your risk and you can move the Bitcoin into a different counterparty setting because it's not a building, it's not a bar of gold. You can move the Bitcoin in an hour. So you should have a periodic health check. First question, do you trust yourself? I'm not joking. Do you trust yourself? When you're 75 years old and your hands are shaky and your eyes fail and maybe you've got early onset Alzheimer's, you really want to trust yourself with your private keys? Do you trust yourself? Do you every time you get in an Uber or a taxi cab and someone's driving you, you're trusting them with your life. If they drive you into a bridge and they kill you and you've got the keys in your head, what happens to your family? Right? So you have to ask yourself the question, do you trust yourself? Do you trust your family? Do you want to share your keys with the rest of your family, with 2 of them, 3 of them? Do you trust your 3-year-old child? Obviously not. Do you trust your 90-year-old great-grandparent, that's in the hospital, with cancer, with the private keys? Do you trust your friends? Do you trust your trustees? You got to ask these questions. Who do you trust? Do you trust your bank, your vendor, your hardware wallet provider, the crypto exchange, the stock exchange? Do you trust your customers? Do you trust your employees? Do you trust your local government, your state government, the federal government? Who do you trust? It's going to change. If you trust somebody now, like I tell you, like maybe I trust myself right now, but I might not trust myself in 30 years, right? I certainly wouldn't trust a 1-year-old child in my family with the keys to the car or the keys to the Bitcoin. So you got to think about it, and this changes. Maybe when your son or daughter is 25, you're going to trust them with the keys. Maybe you won't trust them when they're 18. You have to have systemic checks and balances. Who else is watching over your assets? Do you trust the watchdogs? It's valuable if you know that there's a lot of very well-educated people that are very motivated to make sure that no one loses the asset. Or, there are certain countries where you might want to trust your assets. Probably my stocks are more trustworthy in New York City than if my stocks were trading in a war zone in Asia or in a country in Africa that was just toppled with a coup. So use common sense, right? Ask yourself the question, are you alone or do you have powerful allies that share your interests? How transparent are your counterparties? MicroStrategy is a publicly traded company. We publish thousands of pages of financial disclosures. If you have Bitcoin with a public company versus a private company, you're probably safer with a public company than a private company, right? You're safer with a big, well-regulated company than you are with, with 3 people that started up a startup, in the middle of a random country. So you have to ask the question, will they fail gracefully? How transparent are they? If you look at the tragedies in Bitcoin for the past year and a half, people made the right decision to buy Bitcoin, and then they trusted it with BlockFi or Celsius or Voyager or FTX or on Genesis. And they trusted counterparties that were private companies, that were opaque, that were not transparent. And at the end of the day, the people running those companies failed them, and the companies failed them. And, I think the Bitcoin maximalist community would say, not your keys, not your coin, but it doesn't answer all the nuanced questions, which is, well, if I keep my keys, do I use a hardware wallet? A hardware wallet from whom? Do I use multi-signature? Who has the other key? Who has the other signature? Where do I store it? If I store it in a bank or in a bank vault, can I get to it? Do I tell somebody else in my family or not? Do I give it to my accountant? Do I not? There's a lot of questions, and you can get failed by any number of counterparties. So that's not that simple.
Hey, crypto rock stars. Welcome back to Crypto Street. where we break down the crypto roller coaster in style. Hit that subscribe button, buckle up, and let's talk about the potential Bitcoin roller coaster post-ETF approval. Anthony Pompliano just threw a curveball into the Bitcoin ETF hype. He's not popping the champagne just yet. According to Pom, an influx of billions might only give us a 12% boost. Why? Liquidity, baby. About 70% of Bitcoin's been chilling for over a year. Pumping $100 billion. That's a wild 40% jump in liquid market cap. Pom's caution lights are blinking. Now, switch gears. Metrixport Research is putting on their bullish hats. They're shouting from the rooftops. Bitcoin soaring to $50,000 in January 2024. Why? A whopping 95% chance the SEC greenlights that ETF. They've been in a powwow with investment giants like BlackRock discussing ETF dreams. Bitcoin's price is already flexing at $44,000, and Metrixport's got their crystal ball polished. Hold to your hats, thrill seekers. The SEC's been doing the cha-cha with investment bigwigs like BlackRock and Fidelity. 24 meetings, people. James Seifert from Bloomberg's shouting from the rooftops. 90% chance the SEC's giving the nod to Bitcoin ETFs by January 10, 2024. The drama unfolds between January 8 and 10. Are we in for a crypto blockbuster? Bitcoin's playing hard to get, but it's acing the game. Despite the roller coaster, it's standing tall at $42,855.99. Weekly gains, a cool 4.3%. Bitcoin's flexing its muscles, and with a probable ETF approval, it's like Bitcoin saying, I'm here to stay. Now, let's continue our discussion with Michael Saylor.
Well, I think you can't really underestimate the significance of the spot ETFs. It's not unreasonable to suggest that this may be the biggest development on Wall Street in 30 years. I mean, the last thing that was this consequential was the creation of the S&P index and the ability to invest in all 500 S&P companies via one trade at the same time. So this is very eagerly anticipated, but most of the money in the Bitcoin market right now is the hodlers and the traditional crypto investors. Mainstream investors, mainstream retail, mainstream institutions have not had a high bandwidth compliant channel to invest in this asset class until these spot ETFs. So I think in January, the approval of the spot ETFs is going to be a major catalyst that's going to definitely drive a demand shock. And then that will be followed in April with a supply shock because there are about 900 Bitcoin a day available for sale by natural sellers, the miners. And that number is going to be cut to 450 Bitcoin a day in April. So it's a pretty big deal.
And that puts Bitcoin where a year from now?
Higher. There's
How much?
We could probably keep a bunch of economists and modelers working all day long to calculate the supply, demand, and price elasticity of this. I don't think we've ever seen, a 2 to 10x increase in demand combined with a halving and supply in a scarce, desirable asset that people want to hold for a long period of time. So I think we're expecting 2024 is going to be a major bull run for the asset class. We just don't know how far the asset's going to run at this point. The ETFs are unlevered and they charge a fee. MicroStrategy is an operating company, so we're fairly unique because we can generate additional Bitcoin via our operations, either via P&L operations or capital markets operations. And we can take advantage of intelligent leverage. Like we can borrow money at 0% interest for many, many years. And we did that with a convert. And then we can use it to buy Bitcoin. So you can really think of the ETFs as like shipping lines, very efficient, long haul, carry a lot of capital. MicroStrategy is more like an airline. We don't have the cargo capacity in our capital structure that a container ship has, but we can go faster and we have higher performance. So we provide you leverage and we don't charge a fee. And so if you can dig into our capital structure, you get comfortable with that. We offer sort of a high performance vehicle for people that are Bitcoin long investors. Well, we will absolutely continue to acquire Bitcoin. Our strategy is to acquire and hold the Bitcoin, and we will acquire it by a variety of different means as long as they're accretive to our shareholders. So our goal is always to find a way to pursue more Bitcoin per share for our shareholders. And sometimes we do it with debt, sometimes we'll do it with equity, sometimes we'll do it with cash flows from the business. And of course, the volatility in the market just creates more opportunities for us as an operating company. And our particular business strategy allows us to harvest that volatility to the benefit of our shareholders. I think fair value accounting is a giant step forward for the industry. And up until now, corporations have had to invest all of their spare treasury reserves in sovereign debt. Sovereign debt normally has a compound annual growth rate of a few percent. The cost of capital for most companies is 10 to 12%. Bitcoin's got a compound annual growth rate of 40+% over the past 4 years, and even higher in the more distant past. So having a digital money like Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset allows you to beat the cost of capital, and it turns your balance sheet into an asset instead of a liability. So we think this is a real game changer for corporations. I think that we'll wait for our finance people to give us that recommendation. I do think that the fair value accounting guidelines from FASB are just going to be good for the industry in general. They'll provide more transparency, and they'll be good for Bitcoin as an asset class and for Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset for companies that have large cash flows that they want to carry forward.
We have, I think, somewhere between 8 and a dozen filings in front of this agency with regard to exchange-traded products around Bitcoin. And the staff of the various divisions respond when market participants have filings. We also had a court case earlier this fall in this regard. And so we do things according to our authorities and how courts interpret our authorities. And that's what we'll do here as well.
That wraps up today's Crypto News highlights. Stay tuned for more updates, insights, and analysis from the world of cryptocurrencies. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content.